What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Wait What Are We Talking About podcast, episode 186. My name is Bret, aka Enigma9011, and you can catch this podcast live over on twitch.tv/Enigma9011. You drop a follow over there, get notified when we go live, join on the chaos, join on the fun and conversation over here as we record. But if you can't catch it live, that's a-okay. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, any way you can support the show, like, subscription, follows, whatever it is, reviews. It may seem small, but it does help the channel grow, so we would love and appreciate you for that. Today, for our topics today, we're talking a lot of video games. We're going to be talking about the Borderlands series, and we're going to be talking about Mortal Kombat 1 with spoilers and stuff like that, but we'll do non-spoilers and then spoilers afterwards. We'll give you a fair warning. You can skip it, come back, all that fun stuff. But let's dive in to topic one. Let's talk about Borderlands. Bret, why the hell are you playing Borderlands right now? Well, random viewer who asked me that. Lately, I've talked on the podcast about a few games here and there. Some indies I've tried out. Cyberpunk I tried recently. And I'm in this weird mental fog or haze of like, I can't focus on games, or they don't seem super intriguing, and that's disheartening, really. So I kind of wanted something I could turn my brain off and just sit here, not have to really dissect the story, understand what's going on, and just kind of have something to do, obviously, to fill my time. And I turned to Borderlands. I'm like, you know what? I haven't played this series in a little while. I originally played it on the Xbox, now primarily playing on PlayStation. I'm like, that's be a fresh new experience. Platinum trophies, woohoo, all that fun stuff. Chase that again. So I decided, hey, let's jump into it. Let's replay these and have a fun time. So since starting that maybe a week or two ago, I've played Borderlands 1 all the way through, and I've started my journey through Borderlands 2. I think my intention right now is to play through all of them. So the four, I guess you could say, main title games. So 1, 2, pre-sequel, and then 3. And kind of just have some fun with it. Like I said, just turn off the brain, shoot some stuff, punch some stuff, laugh at some things. And just kind of fill that like game time, fun time space with something until there is that new experience that's like, oh, this is really taking my time and I'm liking it, investing in it, whatever, a la topic 2 later, Mortal Kombat, and then other stuff, Spider-Man, later in the year, until maybe there's that want and need also to play other stuff before the end of the year, for those game discussions. But oh, Tiny Tina's in there as well, my apologies. But yeah, it's been a good time to jump back into it. Surprisingly, I have a lot more fun with Borderlands 1 than I anticipated. I'm not sure if we talked about it in the past. I know I've definitely had this discussion with people when talking the series, but Borderlands 1 was very, obviously, their first touch in it, but was much more simpler in terms of comedic stuff and story in comparison to 2. I felt like they just kind of, they realized what they wanted to do, they realized the story and the characters they wanted to have, and they kind of went balls to the wall with it. And obviously the success of Borderlands 2 shows that, but in terms of presentation, it was a lot different than Borderlands 1. Not that Borderlands 1 was super serious or anything, but at times feels very dry and just kind of like you're going through the motions. And a lot of the characters, no offense, don't matter. I would say there's only one character that doesn't carry on to the rest of the series that really mattered, with TK Baha, shout out. But other than that, like, there's just jabronis that you're dealing with that don't mean anything and have no personality, anything like that. So in replaying 1, I honestly had a lot of fun playing it, and kind of remembered most of the things to do and areas to go to. When playing these games for the first time, I usually went with the turret character. So for example, for Borderlands 1, I played Roland just to have that turret support. Playing on my own, to have that extra set of hands, really, the gun, to shoot other stuff and help with enemies. That was usually the route that I kind of leaned towards. With this playthrough, I played with Mordecai for the first time, so the hunter. So primarily he uses snipers and pistols. Not that it really matters across all these games. You know, the weapons they say they're better with, you can use whatever you want. But he was fun. I thought his skill tree was a little lacking in some areas. He has his eagle or hawk bloodwing that he can use to kind of send out and attack enemies. I felt like I was barely doing that. And instead, there was another path of the tree that I really, really enjoyed, where his bullets have the opportunity to like ignore shields. So you can just blast through people. And that was definitely helpful later in the series, or rather the title, the game, as you're going through and not having to worry about this secondary health bar of depleting the shields and deplete the health. You can rinse through people that way. But he was a fun time. In terms of the platinum and stuff, obviously you need to use everybody, but you only have to do it to a certain extent. So I didn't really dive fully into Lilith or Brick. I do remember playing a little bit of Brick in a multiplayer playthrough years ago. Not that we made it through the entire game, but he was fine. Obviously, he just punches stuff for his special, but he was okay. But yeah, the game was a fun time. Like I said, a lot of it kind of rushed back to me of like, oh yeah, this area and this story and this is what we're doing. And then diving into the DLC was good because the DLCs are varied and interesting enough. It's just, there's one little bit of a game thing that they kind of lacked on. And I get what they were doing, one, but also kind of in two sucks. They don't scale the DLC to what player or what level you're at by the end of your playthrough. So obviously the DLC came out post the initial release, so maybe they were planning for like players who had already done their second playthrough by the time this had released, or whatever it was. But if you finish your first playthrough, I believe I was around upper 30s when I finished that playthrough. If you go into the first DLC, that is scaled back to like level 15 or something like that. So while you're able to get through obviously the story and the levels fast because you're just running and rinsing through these enemies that are low level, to me, there's not really a lot of joy out of that because, well, what's the point? I'm literally just running through, bing, 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 just wiping through all these enemies. There's no challenge, there's no fun to it, and it's kind of like, oh, all right, do I really even care about what's going on? And that was kind of the case for, unfortunately, most of the DLCs. The only one that I noticed was a little bit scaled up was Moxie's like Thunderdome or whatever the fuck it's called. That one scaled up a little bit, but that one doesn't have much of a story to it. It's just waves of enemies and you're kind of surviving and battling through those. But the zombie DLC, the one with Athena, oh crap, what is it called? It's the Lancers. You're dealing with those guys. General Knox, yeah. That, and then the Claptrap DLC, which honestly I didn't even finish the Claptrap DLC because, once again, it just felt like nothing was worth it because there's no challenge to it. Those kind of fell flat. I feel like I've played those DLCs in the past and I remember the generic story. I think I got right up to the end of the Claptrap one back in the day and couldn't finish the last boss because it was very difficult. But that was a little disappointing in terms of a playthrough. In order to get to the platinum, like, you got to get to level 50. So, like, not having that experience come in as well was a little frustrating. Ending up just doing half-ish, maybe a third of a second playthrough and eventually reaching that goal. But that was just a little bit of a down point, I would say, in terms of, like, a fun value, I guess you could say. So yeah, that was Borderlands 1. Borderlands 2, I've delved back into as well, not as far as completion as the first one. But I will say this one definitely has a lot of nostalgia tied into it when jumping back into it. Just like all the memories are flooding back in of that initial release, like remembering the midnight release, remembering running into these areas for the first time. We mentioned the comedy already, but those comedic elements, and forgetting about like the challenges that they had as well. Different challenges of like little Easter eggs you could find of the vault symbols, or challenge runs of defeating certain enemies or bosses before XYZ, whatever it was. Those coming into play. Handsome Jack being a fantastic villain, and his kind of shit talking throughout the entire game. Just a great game overall. I do remember always hitting this kind of lull point in terms of the story, but hopefully getting past that, get back to the good stuff. I mentioned it earlier, but usually I went the turret character. So I remember with the initial playthrough, I did go with Axton, and his turret was great. Right now, I'm playing as Salvador the Gunzerker, who I've never played as before. His tree's okay. The Gunzerking ability, like having dual wielding, essentially, is fine. I don't know if I'll stick with him the entire way, as eventually you do have to play all the characters if you want the platinum once again. But we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, Borderlands 2 is great. Eventually they would obviously add some DLC characters, so they added Gage and Krieg, which I think I have a little experience with Gage and her robot that she could summon. And then they also had DLC content for this one, which I want to say when it initially released, I played a few of them, if not all of them. But those stories I definitely feel a little bit more like distant from, that I don't remember as well. Maybe it'll be one of those things when I eventually dive into them, like, oh yeah, I remember this. I think I remember Hammerlock's the best, which is like the tree fortress that you start off in, and the kind of, not cosmic elements, but spiritual elements you deal with in the enemies. Hopefully when it comes down to that point, it is something that they scale to, once again, like learned from in the first game, and it's not just cakewalk. But yeah, definitely been enjoying diving back into that one. And like we said, they really found or hit their stride with the story in terms of the comedic elements. But then when shit really hits the fan and the build up with Sanctuary and Handsome Jack and what happens to certain characters, like that one was great. So we go from great to a kind of meh one, in my opinion. Pre-sequel for some reason felt like kind of lackluster. And I don't know why specifically. Obviously it's the origins of Handsome Jack, what turned him to kind of go evil. And you see him from his start. In terms of that, I think towards the end it got interesting with him and his story, but the rest of it kind of just, for some reason, felt flat. You're on Pandora's moon, so you have the game mechanic of the low gravity, and you can like curb stomp players by dropping down real fast with like a jetpack or something. But yeah, it includes all characters that have been part of the series before that you can play as. So you have Athena, who was part of the General Knox DLC. You end up helping her. You have Wilhelm before he's a full robot in Borderlands 2. Nisha, I believe, was probably the lowest connected character. Runs the town of Lynchwood. Yeah, I don't even remember her, but I'm guessing she's part of 2. And then Claptrap. Claptrap was just the funny one to have, with the different versions he can have himself kind of transform into for his skill tree and specials. So he's been there since the start. Character DLCs, you can play as Jack himself, and then Aurelia, Hammerlock's sister. Never delved into either of them. But yeah, that one kind of fell flat in my opinion. I wonder if in a replay it will maybe connect a little bit more. They definitely kept up their comedy that they had kind of grown from or picked up on with 2 and then gone from there. Borderlands 3. For me, Borderlands 3 started off hot, and then that was another one that kind of, not fell flat, but I don't know if just it got repetitive as it continued. So with Borderlands 3, I think the main story here is it's another weapons manufacturer that you're kind of warring against. I feel like there's a big war that's going on or something like that. It's weird that this is one of the more recent titles and I remember the least about it. I do remember being really excited for it. This was the first one I think I was going to dive into multiplayer, like have a group and a team to play with. So playing with like John, Dio, and Billy and playing a 4-player game, that was a lot of fun because there is more challenge to it. I believe they scale up the enemies for that, whether it's adding more enemies or just higher level enemies as you're going through. That was fun. But then also, I guess maybe it's a me problem, just from a flow standpoint with missions, it felt a little bit of a slower pace in terms of like checking things off or whatever it was. But the beginning of the game, I had a lot of fun. I think the only character I really actually played was Zane. So I enjoyed that he could make a duplicate of himself for his special ability, and then you could kind of go with that. Similar to the turret characters. Seems like there's a a trend here in who I pick. So yeah, it seemed like it started off hot, running back into familiar characters. You had in this one, they brought the worlds that you could travel in between, which was cool. But yeah, I don't remember much other than that in terms of the game. I don't think I finished it. I think I got towards definitely the final like section or act, and I just was burned out at that point of like, nothing's really dragging this home. That sounds bad. Bringing this home in terms of a wrap up or it's that exciting conclusion. It felt more of just like, we've hit this point, the end's right there, it's a flat line. I don't know if I want to keep going forward. So that one, unfortunately, yeah. And I think I'll say the same thing for Tiny Tina's. Maybe it was just at this point, this was not the game for me in terms of something I wanted to do, the shooter aspect, or whatever it was. But Tiny Tina's, I feel like I only scratched the surface on. Played a little bit of it. I do like that they made the twist on it. Obviously, that Borderlands 2 DLC with the Dragon Keep and the D&D aspect, I guess, was really popular, so they made a full game going off of the D&D aspects or mechanics. So it's more goofy, it's more high fantasy, you're still using the guns and everything, which is in terms of, a different story, because you're just end up doing the same thing or different gameplay. I think you could use some magical attacks here and there. But that's another one, like I said, just scratching the surface, so I don't know if I can give it a fair shake of full thoughts, review, etc. So yeah, gameplay felt fine, just more of the same. And this one I think maybe I also had a tough time connecting to because I didn't recognize any of the characters. Your character that you're playing as is like a creative character, which is cool. Obviously for D&D that's very important, but the characters that Tina had around her that she was playing the actual game with, I don't think I knew any of them. Like none of them were recognizable compared to, from what I understand, the DLC that this takes inspiration from. I believe she was playing with some of the Vault Hunters that you had played with in 1 and 2. This one seemed to be like other characters that you had met somewhere else. I just didn't recognize any of them. So like that to me was like, I have no connection to these characters. I don't understand what's going on. So that felt a little bit of a down. In terms of like fun or enjoyment, that seemed like a lower point for me as well. But yeah, overall, I'm enjoying going back through the stories of, or rather through the games. Like I said, it's just kind of filling that itch of like, I keep using the term turn your brain off of, but just something that takes low energy, low focus. You can still get enjoyment out of it, and I don't know, it's scratching that itch that's needed right now. That, like, I'm still playing games, still having fun, but it's not something that I need to invest every inch of my, or every, like, focus point in terms of, like, I need to know what's going on in the story. I need to go that, whatever it is. Jeff in chat says, it's the summer action blockbuster of game. No big thinking required. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. 100%. Exactly. Thank you. Because, yeah, just something, nothing was really clicking. Like I mentioned in the Cyberpunk podcast, like, it didn't really hit an interesting point until, I'll kind of keep this spoiler free as well, until one character made their appearance, which is funny because I haven't played since then. But after that point, I was like, oh, I see where the story's going. Oh, we have some drama here. Oh, this is intense. This is something I want to expand and learn upon. Apparently not enough. But before that, it just felt like filler, or just nothing interesting was happening. So with this, like you said, it's just the action thing, turn the brain off, go from there, and it's not that big a deal. So yeah, enjoying playing through the first one, going through the second one. We'll see if that continues through the rest of the series. I'd like to, just in terms of completing things. That's another area I feel I've kind of lacked on. But yeah, it's been a fun run through, going back through memory lane, the flooding of feelings of, like, memories of, like, playing it for the first time, and experiencing those things. But we'll have to see how it goes down the road in terms of, like, continuing. But yeah, just want to talk about that for a little bit, and that replay. So let's jump on into the big one, shall we? Let's talk topic 2. Let's talk Mortal Kombat 1. So as of recording, the premium edition came out for players who pre-order that on Thursday. The official release of the game is Tuesday, the 19th, for everybody else. So we're going to be talking about game impressions here, how the story goes. Well, what do you think of the story? What do I think of Invasions Tower, gameplay, etc., etc. Later on, we are going to talk spoilers about the campaign. So if you don't want to be spoiled, that will be your time to check out. And you can come back when you want to and check out what I thought about it later. But don't worry, there will be fair warning, plenty of ample time for you guys to get out of there with safety in mind. So yeah, let's talk about Mortal Kombat 1. So first off, gameplay in this game is fantastic. I think NetherRealm did a great job with the gameplay in this one in terms of the new cameo system and just the movesets and move flow. I don't know. Movesets, everything. The flow of this game feels a lot more fun and entertaining in comparison to Mortal Kombat 11, in my opinion. I did enjoy my time with Mortal Kombat 11. I think I put 120 hours into it. Obviously, we did a replay through it recently where I was like, oh, this wasn't actually as bad. For some reason, playing through it the first time, maybe it's just the online mode of it or the tower mode of it, things felt slower, things felt clunkier, things didn't feel as fun in comparison to a Mortal Kombat 10. I don't know why there was that disconnect, but I felt that was the case. In terms of Mortal Kombat 1, this one feels way more interesting. In playing the campaign, obviously you play a majority of the characters, and usually when you're playing through campaign mode, you have your high points of, like, characters you really connect with, and your low points of, like, oh boy, this is not connecting. A la me in the recent playthroughs, Kotal Kahn. Kotal Kahn was my kind of barrier, especially in MKX, because his moveset wasn't as fleshed out as MK11. But you usually hit these lulls in characters of, like, it's fine. You don't connect with those characters as well. In terms of MK1, at least from a campaign standpoint, I didn't really hit that point of stuck or lower point or dip in terms of gameplay. Obviously, there was, like, with each chapter being 4 matches with the characters, your first match, usually especially if you haven't played the character at all, it's going to be rough. You don't know what combos you're going to hit. You don't know what specials you can do. Granted, you can look it up, or you could be me and just hardwire it and be like, I'm going to try out different combinations and see what works. It really depends on your playstyle, but I never hit that wall of like, this is difficult, or this is just somebody that I don't like. All the characters in terms of the campaign kind of enjoyed. There were things that definitely flowed better for other characters or that I picked up on faster, but everybody had moves or specials that I connected with, I could use on a regular basis, and it made the game fun and kept the flow going. I didn't hit those lulls. So I do appreciate that all the characters feel accessible, or at least easy enough to learn the basics, and will be, hard enough to master. What's that? Easy to learn, hard to master? There's a phrase. I don't know what it is, but you guys probably understand what I'm going for. That felt good. And so gameplay feels fantastic. Cameos are a nice touch. I need to use it better and learn how to use it better, but it's a nice fun touch to pay homage to the old games and the old timeline of like these older characters that we love and care about that maybe did not make it into the roster, story, etc. For this one, there's that. So that's great. Campaign's fantastic. We'll get into more of that later. I'll just leave it that. It's fun, it's interesting, it's engaging. Let's talk about invasions. Now, this is the one tip I'm going to give to everybody. This is not a spoiler. This is nothing there. This is just my tip to you to enhance your experience. Play the campaign / story mode. Story mode first. Play that first. Go through that ride. If you don't do that first, there's potentials of spoilers in the other modes. In the general concept of what Invasions is telling, and in what the tower mode will tell you in the aftermath. I only knew about the tower modes because one of the developers put it out there on X, Twitter, whatever. She stated that the tower endings are going to tie in, or at least reference, things that will happen in the main campaign. And then you can see what the characters hypothetically would have done if the focus was on them. So play the campaign first, then dive into the other modes. We're still not discussing spoilers, so it's just going to be generic thoughts from here on the other two modes. Towers are fine. It's your generic arcade tower ladder. Nothing really special there, nothing added, nothing to really write home about. Checks the box. Invasions is this single-player story that is almost like a mixture of towers and, for the lack of a better comparison, Mario Party. It's a board. You go from spot to spot and you do small fights or challenges sometimes with modifiers, sometimes just not. Sometimes there's towers in those. And you're going through and you're progressing through the map until you finish it and go to the next one. Weirdly looks like The Sims. Fair enough. From what I've played out of I think there's 5 or 6 worlds. I've played through one world in its entirety. It's a fun time. It's nothing to write home about. This is going to be your mode to primarily get your unlockables and, just kind of see what this game has to offer in terms of variety. It's fine so far. I don't know. In terms of a story, I've gotten one little glimpse, and it's a cool setup and premise. I don't know how the evolution of that story will continue as you go through, and I'm not sure how the challenge will elevate as you progress through it. I have hit a couple of not rough points, but parts where it is a little bit more tricky and challenging. There's no negative for it. It's just like, oh, you died. You can come back and redo it. If you want to go back and train and level up your characters, which this has, you can do that. But in terms of a game mode, it's fine. It's fun. It's nothing, like I said, that's going to knock your socks off of. But there's that. Overall, once again, I kind of forgot to mention this, but they have a level up system in Mortal Kombat 1. Doesn't happen in the campaign at all, but across all the other modes, you will have a profile level, a character level, and a cameo level that you can gain experience for playing different modes. Your profile level will gain you the ability to unlock different cameos so far that are locked, and I can't recall if there's anything else, but that will get you access to, I believe there's 4 or 5 cameos that are locked from the beginning. So your main profile will do that. Your character XP, they took this a little bit from Injustice, where each character had their own level experience that would increase their stats. Stats, I believe, don't come into play here unless it's the invasion mode. But what you do with the character XP is it's kind of like a battle pass, season pass, whatever. You don't have to buy it. It's just in there. But you can unlock different things that are character specific. So you can unlock different brutalities. You can unlock different profile cards. You can unlock different cosmetics. Those kinds of things per your character. And cameos, same exact thing. Cosmetics, brutalities, probably fatalities. Those are all in there. So it kind of rewards you for whatever player you're playing as. You can unlock rewards for that. I think that's fun. I know in the past titles they've had the crypt, where you go through, unlock different chests, and it would be kind of like not randomized. Most of them would be in certain spots, so if you looked up a guide, you would know where to find these things. But it had that aspect to the player of like, I have no idea what I'm opening right now for 500 gold. Pooh, pop that. Oh, it's just a little emoji or whatever it is. With this one, obviously, if you want certain things for certain characters, you have to play those certain characters. Get the experience, go with that. I do enjoy that. Kind of 50-50 on the crypt, but we'll talk about that later. So you have that aspect in here. And what was I going for? Oh, let's talk about cosmetics, because we talked about unlocking cosmetics. Mortal Kombat 11 had cosmetics, and they kind of took that from the introduction in Injustice 2. Injustice 2's cosmetics, we talked about, a lot of fun, very rewarding, seeing your different heroes in the different costumes that you can unlock, the different color schemes you could do. It felt fun to do that. They tried to bring that over in Mortal Kombat 11, and it was very hit or miss. Masks make perfect sense. The masks look cool, make your character different, unique. And then they had other cosmetics that were similar, where it was just really small and minute, and that's usually not something you're going to be able to pick up on or really focus on while you're playing, in comparison to your superheroes in a whole new suit looking awesome. MK1 kind of fits the same mold, unfortunately. They have less cosmetics in terms of items that are equipped, mask, weapon, hip thing, whatever it is. Each character has one cosmetic that is tied to them. So for example, Sub-Zero, Scorpion, it is their mask. That's the only thing you can customize. Melina, Katana, Kung Lao, it's their weaponry or it's their hat. They have one thing that you can change. Some characters it's going to look really good with. Some characters it's not going to look great with at all. It is what it is. It's not my favorite thing. The masks are cool. The rest are not. Color schemes do make their return, and there are plenty. I think each character is going to have 9 different color schemes, I believe, tied into their attire. Speaking of attires, it seems like there are going to be plenty of those available to you throughout the game or throughout the lifespan of the game. What those attires will entail, I don't know. I would love, obviously, shoutouts to the past Mortal Kombat games. We'll have to see. And cameos are the same. Cameos also get this love, where they don't have the cosmetics you can change like the main characters with certain items, or you could swap it entirely. But they do get palette swaps. It seems like they will get skins as those spaces are empty. I'm hoping for the cameos, those are the ones they really go hard with of like past titles. For example, Cyrax, the skin that he has in this one off default is literally labeled Mortal Kombat 3. I would love if they had like a Mortal Kombat 10 skin where it was Triborg, what Triborg looked like, or a Mortal Kombat 11 skin where we saw him in the campaign, couldn't play as him, but you could take that look and put it in here, or at least an inspired look. That would be great. Or tippity top, I believe we talked about this on stream. I don't remember if it was Genghis or TJ, but they're human versions. Let's see the human version of Cyrax or Sector, with those two being cameos. Jax being in there. Like, I think his cameo doesn't have his metal arms. I could be wrong. But, like, make a variation with that. Sonya being her Mortal Kombat 1 skin. Let's see her Mortal Kombat 10. Same with Kano. It's obviously young Kano here. Let's see old Kano. I think for the cameos, that would be the best. Do that for them. And obviously your main roster cast, you can have those callbacks as well to the past games. It seems like the slots are there. It's just a matter of time of maybe finding them in the character ladders or whatever it is, or obviously post-launch content. We'll have to see if those are included there. To circle back to Invasions real quick, I forgot to mention, but this is also, I don't know if organic is the right term, but this is a game mode that is going to evolve over time, and it's seasonal content. So right now we're in season 1, and it's based on that story. After each season seems to be like 50 to, I think it's 50 days, because I'm in like 40 something. So after a few months, they will rotate out and have a whole new little labyrinth of islands or stages that you need to go through with additional unlocks. Each season is going to have their unlocks. You can earn seasonal in-game currency to unlock even more skins and more cosmetics and more things to customize your characters with. It seems like that's where a majority of the content is going to come from in terms of newer stuff. For now, each character has 6 slots in terms of skins. I'm sure that's going to be a simple thing where they can add a little scroll bar and, you know, it can go up and down. I'm sure that's what they're going to do. If it's not what they're going to do, that's going to be a little disappointing, because there are a hell of a lot of cosmetics and skins in the seasonal content. But like I said, I doubt it. They're just going to limit it to that. But that's going to be majority where you get your new stuff, I'm going to say. The only other place to get unlockables is the shrine. Now, they got rid of the crypt entirely in this one, so you can't go from chest to chest and get your stuff there. They have the shrine here, and this is your gamble. This is just your lottery machine or your slot machine of randomness. You go there, in-game currency once again. You throw in 1,000 coins. It melts it down, and it's going to spit out a random item for you. I'm assuming you can get these items regardless, concept art, other things like that. I'm assuming you can get them some other way, but this kind of just, yeah, it's like, a random aspect of it isn't super fun. I'd like to know how to get those items otherwise. Like, now saying it out loud, I don't know how you would get concept art otherwise, and that's a little shitty, just like not knowing everything that's involved in the shrine. So you know, like, should I invest more money into this or not if I've gotten everything out of it? Because it seems like with the characters, everything for the character is going to be in their little XP season pass, battle pass, whatever, for the lack of term. That level up process will unlock the character stuff. This shrine just seems to be extra stuff. I don't know. So that's a little, yeah, in terms of like having that and not the crypt. At least the crypt was fun to explore and do those puzzles or whatever. Trying to think of what else they have, or what else to talk about before diving into the spoiler stuff. I mentioned the gameplay. The gameplay's great. It's fun. It's fluid. Just a shout out to the graphics. NetherRealm keeps topping themselves of like how crazy this game's can look. Like looking back on the history from Mortal Kombat 9, that jump to Mortal Kombat X, fantastic. The jump from Mortal Kombat 10 to even Injustice 2 with the facial models, that looks stunning. Then seeing that in 11 was great. This one surprisingly takes it to the next level, and it's getting insane how detailed these models are looking, and at some points even in the campaign, in very close-up cinematic shots, obviously, how realistic these things are looking. It's nuts. So just shout out to them. To have this high fidelity of character models and environments and how things flow in terms of a moveset and seamless transitions from the cutscenes to the gameplay, it's insane. It's one of those things like, I don't know how it gets better than this, but obviously they'll find a way, and they'll go from there. So just shout out to NetherRealm and the teams that have worked on this. It looks absolutely nuts. All right, everybody, this is your time where we are about to enter spoiler territory. We're going to be talking the full story and full campaign of Mortal Kombat 1. So if you haven't watched the stream from this past weekend, or you haven't delved in the story yourself and you don't want to be spoiled, now's your time to leave. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate you. Love you. Come back and check this later and see what I thought. We're about to jump into spoilers for this story in 3, 2, 1. Okay, full spoiler territory. You've had your warning. This campaign was crazy and fun and in amazing and stupid ways that are all possible. So, if for some reason you don't know. So with the ending of MK11, you have the concept of the timeline being rewritten by Liu Kang. He's Keeper of Time. He's going to rewrite stuff. And as we've seen in the ample amount of trailers leading up to the release, we're in the new era. Characters are going to have new backstories, and we're going to deal with new problems, and people are in power, and all that stuff. So that in itself is intriguing. We're doing a rewrite of the timeline. Things are new with characters. Let's see how these characters individually, where their stories go, grow, etc. What's going to be different from the initial timeline? What changes are going to affect how things change and run in this new timeline? So we open up the story, and the Mortal Kombat tournament is still a thing. However, rules are very different. In the initial run of Mortal Kombat, it was a thing placed by the Elder Gods, and it was a defense mechanism from realms just jumping to other realms and conquering them. In terms of Mortal Kombat, if you wanted to take over a different realm, you had to win 10 Mortal Kombat tournaments against them in a row. Outworld had already done that against Edenia. They had won 10 and conquered them. In the initial Mortal Kombat, Outworld was trying to take over Earthrealm, and when we, as the player, pop into the story, they had won 9 out of 10. And this was the last one they needed in order to do that. If they win 10, then they can take over. Okay, right? So, new timeline. Combat, the tournament is still there, but it's just like for fun. It's just like bragging rights, essentially. So we're setting up the Mortal Kombat tournament between Outworld and Earthrealm. And Liu Kang getting his heroes together. He gathers Raiden, Kung Lao, Johnny Cage, and Kenshi Takahashi together. And he's like, we really need to win this one because Outworld's getting a little full of themselves, essentially, and we need to kind of put them in their place and say, like, hey, we're still a threat. We're still your equal. So it's like, all right, we got to win. So he recruits these 4 heroes. All of them have slightly different backstories from what they had in the past. Raiden's now immortal. Him and Kung Lao are the buddies, working the farms. And then Johnny Cage is still an actor, still kind of a dickhead. And him and Kenshi have a little backstory because Johnny has Kenshi's family sword. So Kenshi is now part of the Yakuza, but doesn't want to be part of the Yakuza and wants to reclaim glory for his clan and wants to rebuild there. So we have some tensions in there. So the 4 of them get recruited. They're going to be trained by the monks, and then they also run into the Lin Kuei, who the Lin Kuei are like Earthrealm's defenders. So the original Sub-Zero, Bihan, you have Scorpion, who's his brother, which is Kuai Lang, so no Hanzo, and you have Smoke, which seems to be like an adopted brother that they kind of just took into the clan after something. I don't think we dive into details there. But you run into them, and they kind of help along this journey as well. You go into the Mortal Kombat tournament to face Outworld. Outworld is run by Sindel, who's Empress there, and then she has her 2 daughters, Katana and Melina, who are there. You have some familiar faces in her royal guard. You have Li Mei. It's kind of like the town guard. You have her right-hand man, who is General Shao Kahn, formerly. And then Tanya, who's like super protector of the family themselves. Shao Kahn's General Shao is still kind of a dickhead. He's still kind of like, oh, we shouldn't trust Earthrealm, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So you end up doing the tournament. You win. Hey, this is like the first third of the game. And you're like, oh, okay, that was kind of quick. Meanwhile, in all this back behind the scenes stuff, Shang Tsung is still a part of this timeline, but he's like a nobody. Liu Kang's kind of made sure he's a nobody so he doesn't get back into the evil that he was doing. So he's like a door-to-door salesman, but he's faking like a snake oil salesman. He's kind of like a phony. He fakely. He's trying to sell this fake medicine. He ends up getting jumped because of a former sales guy or customer comes to him and is like, no, this is a fake product, and then they all jump on him and beat him up. He gets approached by a sorceress, who we assume. Turns out to be Kronika. She was the timekeeper in the last one. So now we're getting interesting. We're getting spicy. Ooh, why is she still alive? Why is she still here? Blah, blah, blah. So he, with her backing, kind of grows to power and is kind of in the backgrounds of Outworld stuff, talking into people's ear, saying Earthrealm's going to eventually betray you, and he's kind of gathering allies there, like General Shao, Reiko, and some other individuals who I can't recall. Earthrealm kind of gets tip on this. Uh-oh, Shang Tsung's back. And Liu Kang's like, what? Why is he back? He should be a nobody. Shouldn't be anything going on here. Eventually we learn, and that leans into there's more badness happening behind the scenes. Quan Chi is back, which is a big reveal as he's DLC coming up. He's back, and the two have formed a deadly alliance. Call out to the back, the former games. And they're going to take over the realms. So Liu Kang's like, well, can't have that happen. You go through, try and stop him with good guys, shenanigans happen. We see some events of the former timeline reoccur in different ways. As, like, for example, Kenshi loses his eyesight again, so he has to use Sento and the ancestors that way. We'll see a little bit of a dissension between the Lin Kuei, where it's brother versus brother, as Bihan's very power-hungry and ends up joining the bad guys with the Lin Kuei, and Scorpion and Smoke be like, nah, we don't want a part of that, and go over to the good guy's side. Eventually, this is going to lean into what happens next. And this is the first layer of insanity that this story takes. So, we end up revealing the truth to Sindel, Melina, Katana, Tanya, the good squad of Outworld, who's just really trying to be fair and do things right. We reveal to them how they're being worked. Things are happening behind their backs, stuff like that. So it turns out to be Team Good Guy, duh, against Team Bad Guy, also duh. This whole time, Shang Tsung and Quan Chi have been gathering souls to resurrect an undead army. Wow. Trope. They finally gather enough resources. Our good guys are not able to stop them in time. And we get Kronika making her return, being, revealed as this big baddie that's been messing with things. Psych, it's not Kronika. It's actually Shang Tsung, not the Shang Tsung we knew, but a Shang Tsung from a different timeline being like, haha, I just wanted to wipe out your timeline, Liu Kang, because I fucking hate you. This was the first mind blow moment of this fucking campaign. Let's circle back to MK11. MK11 you play through. Eventually Liu Kang wins. Hey, keeper of time. Kronika's out of the picture. Oh, but wait, the crown that controls the hourglass is broken. Ruh-roh. We get DLC for that one called Aftermath. And Aftermath included 4, I believe, characters or something like that. And it, was the journey of going back again in time and making sure the crown held intact. That included good characters and bad characters, including one Shang Tsung. So eventually at the end of that DLC, Liu Kang and Shang Tsung, who's been a dickhead this whole time, end up fighting each other for control of the hourglass. And guess what, as a player, you get to do? You get to choose who you want to win. You play as them, you win. To me, and I'm sure everybody, it was just like, one of these is canon, one of these is just going to be fun, haha, like the tower modes. This was what would have happened. Psych! No! Both are canon. Both of these timelines have been going and running parallel this whole time, where Liu Kang won, his timeline happened. Shang Tsung timeline, he won, his timeline happened. And they're going here. So that evil Shang Tsung that you had win in Mortal Kombat 11 is this Shang Tsung now being a dickhead disguising himself as Kronika and pulling the strings to wipe out your timeline. Mind blown. So he then reveals or brings all of his baddies from his timeline, which were all dark versions. So dark Shao Kahn, dark blah blah blah, dark blah blah blah. They're all here. So they're gonna invade your timeline and wipe it out. So now it's good and bad guys from Liu Kang's timeline against dickhead Shang Tsung's timeline, right? And you're fighting. Liu Kang gets the idea of like, oh, we're not doing so hot. We need other allies. Maybe if there was another timeline, Shang Tsung's timeline, maybe there's other timelines. Let's go see. He goes to other timelines and calls his friends. He gets the Keeper of Time Katana, Keeper of Time Kung Lao, Keeper of Time Raiden, and there might have been another one, but I'm forgetting. Brings them, those 5 and Geras, fight off Shang Tsung and his timeline's phonies, right? To protect their hourglass so their timeline stays intact. Which then leads to the mind-blowing moment again. I guess this could be 2, this could be 3. We set up a giant Avengers Infinity War Endgame moment where both teams go and recruit all the good guys and all the bad guys across all these timelines. And we get revealed all these different variations of characters on the good and bad guy side. And you just go, holy fucking shit, we're doing this. This leads to the final chapter with the reveal of all these characters on this giant pyramid, calling back to the Armageddon game. You typically in, the games, the chapters, each chapter has its designated character that you choose, you run through it, and you get the conclusion, right? In the final chapter of this game, you can pick anybody. You can pick whoever you want. And they will throw you into that character. One of the random variations from a different timeline. And you see this giant clash happen on top of the pyramid. And this is just pure fucking insanity. You see different variations fighting each other, throwing each other off into the pyramid itself where the souls are, or killing each other, whatever. And you run into different variations of characters on the way up. And the thing about these variations is they're also combinations of characters. So instead of just Shao Kahn, it will be Shao Kahn and Sub-Zero morphed into one, where their movesets are together. It's 1-round fights. You do this through 7 or 8 fights. You get fun cameos from like Johnny Cage as a mime and see the Johnny Cage family. You see the Combat Kids, which I popped for hard, and then they get immediately wiped out by other timeline Katana. That was a little sad. But you get just all this insanity going on. You fight through different variations. The variations are different. There are a few that do stick around, but I played through this chapter twice for a trophy, and the variations are random. You could fight totally new variations. You could fight different ones at different orders. That's kind of cool. So you have this random mechanic to it. You eventually fight to the top, where OG Liu Kang, who made the timeline, and you, whoever you are, fight against super evil Shang Tsung and super evil Quan Chi, and it's your final battle. I almost thought for a moment this is where they're going to bring back the Mortal Kombat 9 like tag team mechanic and throw that in there just because we've had reference to the other titles in here. They did not. But you end up fighting them, you win, and you erase them from your timeline, and then everybody kind of returns back to their respective timelines. Insanity. Story ends. Our initial 4 heroes with Raiden, or not with Raiden, excuse me, Liu Kang, just sharing tea. Johnny's talking about making this whole thing into a movie, and you get your nice happy ending. Post credits, because of course there's a post credits. We need to tease what's happening next. We see Titan Havoc, which I believe they were calling Titans to the people who are like in charge of everything, the timekeepers. Titan Havoc with what I assume is his timeline or a few of his timeline's representatives. And he's like, this was awesome. I don't know much about the character Havoc. I assume he feeds off of this chaos and bloodshed and all that stuff. But he's like, we need to do this again, and it's not gonna stop. And that's where it cuts off. And I'm just like, how the fuck are we going to elevate this even farther in craziness, stupidity, insanity, fun that this was? Like, where do you go from here? I thought it was crazy enough that we're colliding timelines in 11, getting the past and the future going against each other. Like, just a fun nostalgia kick for everybody who's been a part of this series. Now you're taking all these timelines and colliding them together at the same time to get all the variants here. What are you going to do next? And, you know, for everything I loved of this story, from the beginning setup of this new timeline to the absolute insanity that it turned out to be in the later half, I loved it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great ride for someone who's been part of the Mortal Kombat franchise. Granted, not since the start, but from the part that I have been in to this journey. It was fun. It was rewarding. It's like one of those things. We'll reward the people who have been with us for this time. I can't help but also be on the negative about it. Maybe not negative, but be like, I wish it went a different way. I can't shake the feeling of I wish it went a different way in terms of like just focusing on this new timeline. This new timeline was intriguing because we're seeing characters we already know a history for, seeing what's different about them, learning what's different about the Lin Kuei, what's going to happen there, seeing their history there. With Melina now having a disease of the Tarkat instead of being a clone of Katana and being fused with the Tarkatan DNA, trying to see where that goes. Seeing how maybe General Shao does rise to power, or what kind of evil he does to usurp Sindel and her being in charge, stuff like that. That would have been more interesting. And I think we got glimpses of it, like seeing what Reptile's history was, seeing Baraka being actually a really cool guy and not just a super mindless monster, and dealing with this disease that he has. Like, seeing the difference in characters here, I think would have been more intriguing. And they could still do it. But I wish that would have been the focus instead of like this giant universal battle between everybody. Like I said, I still had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was a cool moment. I still enjoyed this story a lot. It's just maybe I can't shake the feeling of like, I wish they delved into that more. We do have a few setup points at the end of this story. We talked about the Lin Kuei, Sub-Zero, Bihan, kind of breaking apart and doing his own thing. I'm curious to know if, like, does that still go to the Cyber Lin Kuei? Do we still get that? We had name drops of Cyrax and Sector in there. Are we going to eventually see their human forms and then have some debate with them? Scorpion, Kuai Lang, and Smoke, they end up forming the Shira Ryu, like in an opposing clan. So I'm excited to see how that story plays out. I believe now Melina is in charge. Yes, Sindel did die. So we'll have to see how her reign goes. Jared is back to life in the form of Ermac, which is a little weird. Cool to see Ermac in here. Also teased as DLC, or not teased, but confirmed as DLC. So seeing him, but then also, like, you have these players in Shang Tsung and Quan Chi involved. How do they recoup? What do they decide to do for their next attack and stuff like that? That would have been interesting for me, or from my perspective, like, we should explore this more. But now, while intrigued, I'm concerned, where do we go from here in terms of scale? Like, we already had insanity in this one of timeline versus timeline versus timeline versus timeline. What do we do different with Havoc's thing? Like, how does that feel different or significant enough to feel like a step up from this universal battle royale that we just had, and not just like it falls flat? I feel like with the rehash here, it felt like the bottom rung, not in a bad way, but just like it's a fresh start. There's nowhere to go but up. With the instant elevation of the Cosmic Battle Royale, that's a huge leap compared to this. Still feels like a step up of a fresh timeline because they have the freedom to do whatever they want. Tell these new stories with these characters, these different backstories, different motivations, different character swaps of this good guy's now bad guy, this bad guy's now good guy, whatever it is. And just build on top of that with slow pieces. Instead, we went this giant leap, and it's like, okay, what tops this super high platform you've made for yourself? It does make sense in terms of invasion mode. Like, that's where your content's coming from, this hypothetical other timelines. We get to see that in invasions of like, oh, this makes sense. This timeline's invading here. That sets up the story for that. And it gives us ample costume changes, color changes, whatever it is, because of the amount of content you've provided, hypothetically, with this universal timeline infinity thing. That makes sense. It's just a little concerning, a little worrying. Granted, NetherRealm hasn't yet, in terms of this recent stretch of games, made me feel like I need to be super worried. I feel they can pull it off. It's just in my head, the wheels are turning of like, what do you do now? And Ed Boon, I believe, has come out and posted on X, Twitter, whatever. This game is going to be supported for a long time, which they definitely have ample amount of content with the timeline thing. So it's going to be a while, as it has been between titles, of seeing the next one. So they have time to figure it out. I just hope they didn't shoot themselves in the foot and like elevating it too high. With the next game, I hope they balance the scale of what they're trying to do with the insanity and still add new stuff to this timeline that makes it feel interesting. There's only one other place I feel that the story kind of dipped down in a little way. There was one point where it's before the reveal of Chronica as Shang Tsung, where we send the Lin Kuei Sub-Zero and Scorpion and Smoke to deal with the Soul Collectors. And Raiden and Kung Lao are like, oh, we want to go too. And Liu Kang, stops them and says, no, I have something more important for you guys to do. I don't think we ever see what they do, or it never comes into fruition. It just kind of is like a dead story point that never gets expanded on. I'm not sure if maybe I just missed something, but that felt weird. Like that we wouldn't jump into whatever journey they were also doing at the same time. And I feel like that happens with our 4 characters that were initially the heroes at the beginning. They just kind of stop and don't do anything. Like Johnny and Kenshi don't do much after they get back from returning from Outworld. I think the only important thing that Johnny did was, oh, we have a drone now that I bought. We don't get any growth from Kenshi towards the finale. And it just falls flat. And there's other characters that fall flat, and I get it. They're supposed to be just kind of, not cannon fodder, but they're supposed to expand on the armies of each side. Reiko's just there. Natara's just there. Ashura has a little glimpse of story in Outworld, and then nothing as she returned to Earthrealm with us. Reptile, we seem to be giving a backstory. He's another one. Just kind of, where was he? Baraka, couldn't go past the city walls because of the disease. So he was just kind of there for the beginning. And then Smoke, like I said, he was just kind of there. We don't get a lot of his backstory other than he was adopted into the clan. There's just a few characters that I wish we got a little bit more with in terms of this story, or at least like continuation of. But I get it. With the amount of elements that they're playing with, it's hard to balance everybody. So, all in all, an amazing, fun experience. Not going to deny that. Amazing, fun experience that I did have with this story and the insanity that they brought to the table. I just can't help shake the feeling of wanting something different. And I know that may be a little bit selfish because, like, I don't know, we're nitpicky, but that's how I'm feeling right now. So, overall, great time, great experience playing it. I cannot deny the amount of TLC they put into all the aspects of this game, graphics, animation, etc., etc. Excited to see where it goes. NetherRealm hasn't missed yet, so I can't really doubt them too much. It's just maybe I wanted something a little bit different out of this new timeline. That's all. But everybody, that's going to wrap up the Wait Were We Talking About podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed today's discussion. Some video games. A little trip down memory lane, some recent stuff, all that fun stuff. But my name is Bret, aka Enigma911. Appreciate you guys hanging out today. If you guys want to catch the podcast live, you can go over to twitch.tv/Enigma911. You can drop a follow over there. You get notified when we go live and join on the chat and discussion like Jeff did with us today. You join on all the fun. But if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, or it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for your amusement the following Friday. Last but not least, any way you can support the show, likes, follows, subscriptions, reviews, whatever it is. It may seem small, but it does help the channel grow significantly. So if you take the time to do that, we would love and appreciate you for it. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Today, thanks for giving this a watch, giving it a listen. If you're playing Mortal Kombat, let me know what you think of it. And yeah, thanks for hanging out. We will see you guys on the next one. Take care.